Welcome back to Great Day Houston. We're at the Houston Area Food Bank where a record number of volunteers has stepped up to help folks out, but at the same time, a record number of people need the services here. We'll tell you how to get food on the table in just a little bit. All right, when Harvey came through, none of us were sure that our place would flood or not flood. We crossed our fingers and hoped for the best. Well, a lot of folks got away with it, but then came the release of the water from the reservoirs, and that's how they flooded. So a lot of folks are asking, what about us? Well, Mano DeAyala is with Buck Keenan Law Firm, and so take us back to why they had to release that water to begin with. That's one thing that people didn't quite understand.
Apparently, according to the Army Corps, they were required, or they decided to release that water in order to minimize other damage, in order to minimize other flows of water that came over or around the reservoirs.
Yeah.
And so they made the decision to release the water when they did so.
And they were saying if they didn't release the water, many more homes
Correct.
Possibly could have flooded. So
absolutely.
You're not necessarily arguing with the point of the release, but at the same time, for a lot of people, what's hard to understand is that they didn't flood with actually Harvey. The reason why they flooded was because of a man-made decision.
There are two types of folks. There are those folks that never flooded because of the rain, because of the hurricane directly, that they flooded because of the decision to increase the outflows from the Addicks and the Barker reservoirs, and that caused them to flooding. And then there are other folks who maybe had a little bit of flooding and it receded, or just a minor bit of flooding, and then that outflow of water considerably increased their flooding and their damages to their homes. So they're kind of two types of folks that got affected by the dam release.
Yeah, I know one group of friends is, you know, they were like, okay, gosh, we got by with everything. We didn't have any issues at all until the release of the water came, and then they had to get out. There was the boat to the house. They lost everything. So what are you proposing happens here?
So there is this doctrine in law called inverse condemnation, and most of us have heard of what condemnation or taking or eminent domain is, and that's basically when a government comes and says, look, I need to either have an easement or actually acquire your property for a highway, for a railroad, for a lake, a watershed, for a community. There's a
negotiated price, right, and they pay you and you go away and they take the property.
And that's kind of the traditional condemnation. What this claim would be is something called inverse condemnation. And inverse condemnation it's kind of like traditional condemnation is asking for permission. Inverse condemnation is asking for forgiveness. They take your property first, and then it is the property owner's responsibility to then either file a claim or a lawsuit against the governmental entity to be compensated for that taking. And so that's what's being discussed a lot now, and there have been some lawsuits filed in D.C. and in Harris County dealing with the Addicks and Barker releases being a taking of property.
Yeah, is there a precedent for that?
Oh yeah, there's a Supreme Court case, actually a 2012 case that basically said a temporary use of your property from releases from the Army Corps of Engineers can be a taking. It depends on the duration, it depends on the foreseeability and the intent. Those are issues.
And the expectation that you knew what probably was going to happen.
So this is one of those cases where it's not where the government necessarily did anything wrong. They could have made the best decision under the circumstances and acted like rock stars, but still, when you take someone's property of a few for the benefit of many, that's where our Constitution, which is heavily protective of property rights, that's where our Constitution comes in and says under the Fifth Amendment that you can't take property without just compensation, which is also found in our Texas Constitution as well.
All right, so I know people are out there saying, that's us, that happened with us. How can they join this lawsuit, or how does this happen?
So if you're a property owner and you think that you may have what we call a takings case, an inverse condemnation case, the first thing I would do is contact a lawyer. Now, there's no real rush to do that right now. People need to take care of their families, need to take care of their properties, take care of their issues. There's not a rush to do all of that. However, at some point in time, that's probably a course of action you want to take. It is not insurance. Whether you had flood insurance or you don't have flood insurance, this is something separate and apart from that. So you'll have a property owner that will be a little bit differently situated than other property owners. Talk to a lawyer who deals with these sorts of things and they can help you.
Are you seeking to take care of all the repairs, or seeking to pay for the home, or what are you hoping to get?
So under the Constitution, fair compensation means whatever damages were caused to the property, whatever the value was for that use, which would include repairing damages and contents of those. Also for that use, that is, I've got to now go somewhere else and acquire housing and things like that. Those are compensable damages typically in these types of cases.
You're saying, like, don't count on this, right?
Right.
Because it also can take, as you're saying, for us to take our time, it can also take some time. We know how lawsuits and these cases
Right.
kind of go. So what are you looking at for the outcome of this?
I don't know of an inverse condemnation case against the Army Corps of Engineers of this size, of this magnitude. I don't know of one. Maybe there has been one. I don't know of it.
Yeah.
The outcome of this case is, it's a little too early to tell, but what I can say with some level of comfort is there's a merit to the claim. The claim is the facts as we know them now, we believe justify the claim, and we're our clients we're discussing with on how to proceed next.
Mano, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, so you got a check from FEMA, but is it enough? And do you think it's fair? Coming up next, someone who's already been through devastation before. He says if you do the right thing and challenge it, you could end up getting more for what your property is worth. We'll show you how to do that next.